Hey everyone, welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat basketball channel. As we all know, Bradley Beal got traded to the Phoenix Suns on Father's Day this past Sunday. The two teams that were vying for Bradley Beal were obviously the Miami Heat and the Phoenix Suns. At first, most of the reports coming from Bleacher Report, ESPN, and other media aggregators highlighted that Bradley Beal's preference was to join the Miami Heat. We all know that Bradley Beal has a no trade clause, and so it was ultimately up to Bradley Beal in terms of where he wanted to get traded, and he said that he would welcome a trade initially to the Miami Heat. This was last week around Thursday, and then by Friday, Saturday, we started seeing some reports saying that the Milwaukee Bucks were also interested in his services, as well as the Phoenix Suns, and then it came down to the final two teams, which were the Heat and the Suns. And ultimately, the Wizards and Bradley Beal agreed to go to the Phoenix Suns, where Bradley Beal now will be playing with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and they have now created a new big three for the Suns. Pretty disappointed initially hearing that news. I thought that the Heat were definitely going to sign Bradley Beal. I didn't think they were going to risk waiting to confirm if Damian Lillard does in fact want to request a trade from the Portland Blazers. And so I didn't want to wait on that contingency as a Heat fan. So I was hoping and thinking that the Heat were going to pull the trigger, especially because of the fact that he had a no trade clause. He essentially said he wanted to play for the Heat, and because of that, I knew that we were not going to have to trade a lot of assets in order to acquire him, because he has such a bad contract for the next 4 years. So he signed a 5-year, $252 million deal, an extension last year with the Wizards, and so he's due $200 million over the next 4 years. So pretty insane contract. I think he's the third highest paid player in the NBA today. But with that knowledge of taking on that extensive, huge contract, we knew that the Heat would not have to part ways, essentially, with players like Tyler Hero or Caleb Martin, who had an amazing playoff run with the Heat this last season. And so I was pretty shocked that the Suns were able to pull this off. Their new owner, Ashibi, has fleeced the Wizards with his offering of Chris Paul, Landry, Shamet, and a multitude of second-round picks and pick swaps. He did offer a ton of second-round picks for whatever that's worth, but in the past 6 months, the Heat have lost out to the Suns, now on Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. Kevin Durant last year said he wanted to get traded to the Suns or the Heat. Nets didn't trade him until pretty much the end of the season this year. And again, it came down to these two teams, and the Suns beat us again. We were second place in the Durant sweepstakes. They emptied the clip. The Nets basically received all of Phoenix's first round picks for the next 4 or 5 years. They pretty much gave the kitchen sink for Kevin Durant, and I can't blame them. They also gave up all of their second round picks now for this Bradley Beal pick, which wasn't too bad, essentially because they were going to waive Chris Paul anyway. Landry Shamet was falling out of the rotation and played pretty poorly this postseason. So not missing out on much in terms of a important role player. But I guess now the Suns are all in with these two moves over the past 6 months, because they don't have any draft picks at all, for the next 7 or 8 years. So basically for the rest of this decade. So yeah, I don't know if it was the best move for the Suns, but they wanted to focus on star power, and adding another former All-Star and one of the best scorers in the NBA with Bradley Beal. So I don't think that addresses their continued issues of depth. I think they're not as deep anymore. They're not going to be able to draft anybody to help with that depth. And then also defensively, they didn't solve their problems because Bradley Beal is not really a good defender at all. So he's not a horrible defender, but he's not a good defender by any means. So I don't think they addressed all of their needs. But hey, it's a star-driven league, and teams that have the best players do typically win. They do typically figure it out, and are able in some cases to build meaningful rosters around these stars at low cost and at good value. So we've seen multiple teams do it. We've seen teams fail in the past, just like the Nets who failed with their Big Three experiment with Kevin Durant, Harden, and Kyrie. But yeah, you never know. So kudos to the Suns for pulling this off. Initially, when this happened, I think myself and a significant amount of Heat fans were pretty pissed off. It's been a while outside of the Jimmy Butler trade where the Heat have acquired someone that they were associated with, tied to, or a player mentioned they wanted to be traded to the Heat potentially, or as they selected the Heat as one of the destinations that they would be open to being traded to. So this goes back again to Kevin Durant. This goes back to now Gordon Hayward in the past. This goes back to Elton Brand, if we even look back even further in the early 2000s before we acquired Lamar Odom through free agency for a few years before we traded him for Shaq. So Donovan Mitchell, of course, can't believe that slipped my mind. Another player that is friends with Bam Adebayo that was willing to play for Miami was another person we were associated to, and we weren't able to pull that trigger. So it just feels like we keep missing. It feels like we're constantly in second place recently. It's been a decade since the Heat have won a championship, which is kind of crazy how time has flown, honestly. So, but we're just second place in the Beal sweepstakes, second place in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. We're basically second place in the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes. We were last year second place in the Eastern Conference, losing to the Celtics in that Game 7 in Miami. So we were second place in that East tournament. Then we were second place overall this year in the playoffs, losing to the Denver Nuggets. So I'm just tired of being second place. I'm just upset that we weren't able to pull it off. That was my initial thoughts. So just been thinking about it more, and just curious to think, like, did we dodge a bullet? Did Miami dodge a bullet for not making this trade with the Washington Wizards? And possibly, I think that answer is possibly. So I'm not as upset now for a few reasons. One, there is a small chance and a possible prospect that the Heat can trade for Damian Lillard, but I'm not too optimistic, honestly, when it comes to that avenue. So we could talk about that in another episode. But Dame Lillard has not requested a trade yet. We've been expecting him to possibly do this over the last 2 or 3 years. He's been frustrated. He's needed help, and he has not received that. So once Dame says that he is interested in leaving and demands for a trade, then I'll be more open-minded and optimistic that the Heat would be a good candidate, because he obviously has mentioned that he would like to play for the Heat. He's friends with Bam Adebayo. That's one of the players in the league that he wants to play with the most. So when that happens, I'll be even more optimistic and happy that we didn't make this offer to Beal, because obviously Dame is in a different category in terms of his ability and impact that he can have for the Miami Heat. So one, that avenue is open, which is good. And also, there are a lot of decent free agents out there and pieces that we could put together. So there are a few other stars, like a Zach LaVine, perhaps, that we could possibly trade for, and a few other guards. I don't know. Free agents, I don't think we don't have the salary for that. Obviously, we have multiple players on max deals. Tyler's max deal is going to kick in next year, so not sure if we can get like a Van Fleet or even like a Brook Lopez, who are going to be free agents this year. So, but there are some folks that could be traded again, like a Zach LaVine, who could possibly be a good fit. I'm definitely not going to say James Harden, obviously, because I would not welcome that trade for the Miami Heat. But if we do strike out with Lillard, because he obviously decides to ultimately stay with the Blazers, then there are some other pieces and players that we can add to our roster, especially at the power forward or center position. So adding someone who's athletic, who's got length and height, that can help us with defense and rebounding. That person needs to be able to spread the floor as well in order to play next to Bam Adebayo. So either like a 3-and-D type of wing, or a power forward or center that can play alongside Bam, or can back up Bam. So I think that's going to be important. And if that's the case too, then I think we would need to re-sign Gabe Vincent, who's going to be a free agent, unrestricted free agent, who's going to be looking to command at least $10 million or so over like a 3 or 4 year deal. So I assume he would get like a 3-year, $30-something million deal, or a 4-year, maybe $45 million deal. So that wouldn't be the most ideal scenario, but I mean, this team was the 8th seed. They made it to the finals. Just shattered any expectation that we had for a team that was in the play-in, and ultimately was the 8th seed, making it all the way to the finals and actually winning a game on the road against Denver, making it seem like they had an opportunity to pull the biggest Cinderella story ever. But unfortunately, they fell flat, and a reason for that was because they struggled offensively, and they didn't have the length and size to help with rebounding. So there are some things we could do. So it's not the end of the world that we didn't get Bradley Beal. But again, one of the big concerns is Bradley Beal's contract. So he's owed $200 million over the next 4 years. Bradley Beal is going to turn 30 sometime in June. So by the end of this contract, he would be basically 34 years old. In his 4th year, he's going to be making over $60 million. And so not an issue if Beal was still putting up spectacular numbers and was healthy, but over the last 2 or 3 seasons, he's been averaging 50 games per season, missing close to 30 or more games, and his scoring average has gone down from 30 plus points to 23 points per game, and his 3-point shooting has been going down. He's averaging around 34% from 3, which is not that great. Tyler Hero last season was averaging, I think, 41%. So and he's not a great defender, as I mentioned earlier, but yeah, he's starting to become more injury prone. He's going to hit the wrong side of 30. He's in the last years of his prime, it seems like, based on his trajectory over the last few years, and he's going to be making so much money. So one injury, and the Heat are screwed. Like, if he gets hurt during this contract, then we're back to where we started, and his contract is so large that we're not going to be able to fill any roster spots with any meaningful players. We're going to have to pretty much get folks on like the vet minimum salary in order to sign. And so then we're going to be back to square one with just having Tyler, Jimmy, and Bam. And we're going to lose folks like Max Strus, potentially, maybe Gabe Vincent, and lose our depth. So, I think that was one issue, was just the contract, and also realizing that, again, because of these limitations that he's had recently with his injury history, shooting percentages going down, point average going down, he thought that they still probably had to make another move. So that would be adding even more salary in future years. And is it worth it for someone who still might not even put you completely over the needle? I thought at first that for sure he would, but I don't know, based on his defense and based on fit, possibly. I think the fit would have been great, but you never know. But yeah, I just don't know if the Heat wanted to mortgage, I guess, their near future for Bradley Beal, unless they knew they were able to get some other players like a Dame Lillard, which in theory they were able to possibly do if they kept Tyler Hero. and traded pretty much all of their future first-round picks, along with like a Kyle Lowry, Caleb Martin, Nikola Jovic, maybe Haywood Highsmith, so any of their young talent, some salaries to match Damian's large salary, plus Tyler Hero as that young asset, and all of our future first round picks, maybe 3 to 4, I would say, could possibly do it, but that's still not necessarily the best offer that the Blazers would have received for Dame. So I think it's not the biggest deal anymore that we lost out on the Bradley Beal sweepstakes. There are, again, plenty of other folks that we could focus on, but one key thing is that the Miami Heat need to focus on getting, if they can, a whale or another star this offseason, because of the new collective bargaining agreement that's going to be going into effect end of next season. And so if any team is over their salary cap and into the luxury tax, there's 2 different thresholds for penalties. So once you're over, there's a penalty, but then if you hit a certain number, I think it's like 189 million or more, then you're in the second apron, they call it, in the luxury tax. And so there are consequences for that with the new agreement, and the Heat are going to be in that this season. There are going to be some penalties this season, but they're not going to be as harsh as the following season once the 2023-2024 season ends. And so the issue with being over the salary cap in the future is going to be that next offseason, if the Miami Heat want to trade for Dame Lillard, let's say that Dame does decide to stay with the Blazers, but then next year the Blazers, do horrible, and he this time demands to be traded, then if the Miami Heat are in that second apron and owe a high luxury tax, then that next year they're not going to be able to aggregate salaries in order to match Dame's. So basically, if we still had Tyler Hero, if we still had Kyle Lowry, if we still had Duncan Robinson, we wouldn't be able to add those 3 guys to equal up to Dame's salary, which is hard. So we would have to trade essentially a Jimmy Butler, maybe even like a Bam Adebayo for Damian Lillard, but not even that, because Bam's salary doesn't match Dame, so it would have to be Jimmy, and I don't even know if Jimmy's salary would match. I don't have those numbers on the top of my head. So that's one huge penalty. So that means we need to go fishing for that whale this offseason. Another issue would be too, as well, if you're in that second apron, is that you're not going to be able to sign any folks through the buyout market. And so we obviously know we got Love and Zeller. Love, who was more important, obviously, and impactful this postseason through that buyout. And so that's another penalty, as well as not having your MLE mid-level exception, $5 million. So we need to make a move. So I understand that we've missed out on Beal, but our focus is going to be Dame, and if not Dame, we're going to have to see what types of role players we can add in order to get us back to the finals. So we shall see. So yeah, are you guys pissed off as Heat fans? I know some folks still are pissed off, and they're going to say Pat was sleeping at the wheel and that we keep missing out on these huge opportunities. But I don't know. We are a pretty successful organization. There is a rhyme. There is a reason for everything that Mickey and that Pat and that Andy do behind the scenes. I'm super appreciative of this organization. We're spoiled. We're one of we're one of a few teams that have won a championship, honestly. Like, not too many organizations are in the finals, every few years. Like, we're a special organization. We don't rebuild. That's not part of our vocabulary, so it's just tough competing in this NBA. And so I'm just excited and happy that we're always competing, that we're always potentially a destination for players to come join the team. We have a really good organization in terms of player development. We have good scouts who have drafted players late like Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and a few others that have developed into great players. And of course, we're the best at crafting and developing undrafted players. So this is a great organization. I'm hoping that we can make some changes and that will allow us to get back to the NBA Finals. But to say I'm not slightly disappointed would be an understatement. But now that more time has passed, I'm totally fine that we didn't pull that trigger. For Bradley Beal, would I have been happy if we added him? Yes. I think we desperately needed him as our number one, possibly number two scorer, and as our third best player overall. And I thought that he would have fit in with the Miami Heat 100 times better than he would have with the Suns. I think he wanted to bail out and not be dependent on or wanted to be in the spotlight with the Miami Heat as our best scorer and possibly, I mean, who knows, potentially second most impactful player. More likely he would have been our third, but still, he would have had the ball in his hands. He would have taken the most shots every game. He would have been our highlight player and go-to player offensively. But now on the Suns, he's the third wheel. He's the third option. He's the third best scorer on that team, and he's super redundant. He's a true shooting guard, just like Devin Booker. He's a three level scorer like Devin Booker. So not sure how I see that fit with the Suns, but could he have done well with the Miami? Possibly, but we'll never know. So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of rumors, obviously, new rumors every day, new reports coming out every day, with the Heat being linked to possibly Zion Williams. I don't even want to go there. Dame Lillard, Zach LaVine, and some other players as well. So I will get back to you guys as soon as I hear more. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. Take care. Talk to you guys soon.